Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Coffee. I pushed my mic way away. And welcome to Coffee Class with Young Screenwriters. I'm Alexie, and
I'm John.
John's somewhere over there, and Adam's down there. So this week, Adam is breaking down the film, The Grand Budapest Hotel. And if you check the link in the description, you'll see the PDF for the screenplay. And I just now put in his tentpole beats. But I also posted it in the chat in case it hasn't updated yet. So yeah.
And by the way, he's so brave to do so because this is a tough film.
It is a tough film,
but it's like so good.
So good. I love this film. I forgot how much I love this film.
It works.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it. It was new to me.
What was your impression is, because this is like the first full Wes Anderson film you'd ever seen. So you didn't go in with bias against him like most people do, or bias for him or against him.
I was against him. I will admit.
Why?
Because I saw Moonrise Kingdom.
Oh.
I think I told this story.
You didn't finish it, right?
Yeah, the theater broke. It was in Kentucky, and the theater broke halfway through. And then they were like, "We'll give you a ticket to come finish it later." I'm like, "I'm not finishing it later. I was halfway through."
That's terrible.
So it was bad.
So are you saying that the theater in Kentucky could not handle the sensibilities of Wes Anderson and therefore it broke?
They said
did the building collapse, or what? The building collapse? Is that correct?
Kind of a logical leap. That's kind of a logical leap.
I mean, it kind of makes sense.
It kind of does. They were like, "This is too much," and turned it off.
Yeah, the following week was going to be Truffaut, and the foundation just went.
That sounds about right. Honestly.
What happened? It's a true story, actually.
Yeah. Adam,
I think with Wes Anderson, his biggest problem is his fans are kind of insufferable. Like, he's a great filmmaker in his own right. And I think a deeply underrated writer. I think he's a fan. Like Duke
basketball.
Oh,
what?
She went full Kentucky on us.
You mean as in basketball, the sport, and Duke, the university? Okay. Sorry.
Oh my God! What?
I had no idea what you're talking about.
You can take the girl out of Kentucky, but you can't take basketball.
I am not, just to clarify, I am not drinking soda. I am drinking coffee, iced coffee.
Oh.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, I would never.
When I saw Adam with the small silver can, I was like, is that a Diet Coke?
I thought he was knocking down some brewskis.
I would never drink aspartame willingly.
Oh my God.
Aspartame.
I'm such a snob.
Speaking of snobs, Wes Anderson.
Okay, yeah. He's underrated as a writer, and that's what we're going to really examine. But there's so much, if you've never watched him before, his direction and the production design and the cinematography is so defined and specific and unique that can be very overwhelming for people. Like, I remember the first time I watched like Royal Tenenbaums, I couldn't get over how idiosyncratic and specific and weird everything was. Like, how the characters were placed in the frame was the joke, and I'd never experienced that choice before effectively in an American film. Like, you see that in what's his name, Jacques Tati, or these comedic French filmmakers would use comedic staging and physical comedy as part of the presentation of everything. But it's so weird to see a American filmmaker who's obsessed with J.D. Salinger using those devices and visual cues. I think he's very underrated, and this is one of his best films.
Underrated.
Especially. I think he's.
How can he be underrated and everyone knows who Wes Anderson is?
He's underrated kind of as a writer, is what I meant. He's overrated as a director. I think underrated as a writer, but he's a director.
Yeah, I was telling John and Adam that I just feel like he's feeling himself the whole time. I was like, wow, he's feeling himself.
Great.
And by the way, it'd be hard to find a director who's not feeling him or herself.
Right, a good director.
Because you don't wander in that going, I'm uncertain about who I am.
Fair. That's a good point. That's a great point.
Yeah, also just sort of the concept of this film being you could tell it's so specifically borrowing from 20th century novelists in Europe. Like it was inspired in the beginning, like it says, inspired by the writings of Stephen Zweig, right? Who is a basically obscure novelist now who's died out, but was very popular at the time. And he would always have these ornate openings where you'd have a writer be a character giving an account, and a rare account. And there's so many, all of Jude Law's storyline, interviewing Zero, Mustafa, and the idea of the girl in the beginning opening the book and closing the book at the end, it's all based on like the concept and framing device of this is sort of like a peek back into the past through the lens of this like early 20th century novelist and the way they speak and the way they act. It kind of is like the emphasis of the nostalgia. It's the choice you would never really see in a movie, an American movie. No. And it works. It really works.
Well, do you want to go ahead and break it for us, Adam?
Yeah, I'll break it. So I'm going to go through. So this film, it can be, I think, easy to be distracted by the framing device of this film, because at the end of the day, the vast majority of the narrative and the actual meat of the protagonist and their goal and the act breaks and the emotional core of the movie is set in Gustav's time, and it's Gustav and Zero's story. The story within a story is just a framing device in terms of like the core narrative, how it works. And I can imagine if somebody who's like trying to like understand how this movie worked, they might overemphasize the part that's taking place in the 60s with the writer interviewing Zero. But really, fundamentally, the vast majority of the narrative is about Gustav and Zero and their friendship. And while we open with the story of the girl going up to the writer and reading the writer's monument and opening up his book, and then us jumping into his words and his account of this interview, which is the narrative, the story really starts when Zero introduces the protagonist of the film, I would argue, who is Gustav H. Gustav is a vain concierge who fraternizes with his wealthy older guests, and he seems to get a lot of value from his social status and his rubbing elbows with people of power and wealth and influence. And he seems very vain and deeply obsessed with his social status at some fundamental level. But he is very good at what he does. He would argue probably that he's the best at what he does, being a concierge for this elite hotel. Also, I just want to note that this film takes place in a fictional European country and very much is a fantasy rendition, a fantasy interpretation of early 20th century Europe. So Zubrovka is not a real place, and that kind of helps land the element of, how should I say this? The lack of realism in the account and the sort of distance from the time, the nostalgia. Anyway, so as we jump into Gustav and we learn about him through the eyes of Zero, who's the new lobby boy at the Grand Budapest Hotel, we learn Gustav has these affairs with these older women, and he seems to be an attraction that's central to the hotel itself. The guests, as Zero says, came for him. They're like the most wealthy and influential guests. And we learn about his relationship with this Madame D, who is this extremely wealthy woman played by Tilda Swinton, great prosthetics. And she tells him that she fears for her life. And he says, "You shouldn't worry. Go. I'll light a candle for you at the St. Maria, at the candle at the St. Maria." And when she leaves, he tells Zero to light a candle for her. And he says, "Wait, who are you?" And Zero says, "I'm a lobby boy who, pending your approval, should start service." So he starts his interview with Gustav interviews Zero. And we basically learn very quickly and brilliantly that all of Zero's qualifications at other hotels and other institutions, no experience. Oh, you worked as a dishwasher in this other hotel? No experience, no education, nothing. But in the elevator back up, and Gustav asks him, after the interview seems to have gone horribly for Zero, "Why do you want to be a lobby boy?" And Zero says, "Well, who wouldn't? At the Grand Budapest." Excellent answer, Gustav says. And this is key to sort of realizing what Gustav really cares about. And he cares about the customs and tradition and the perception of value of the institution of the hotel. That very tellingly is what wins Zero the job. And from this point, they sort of enter in Zero's training as a lobby boy, as he learns more about the hotel and its working, and he becomes part of the social infrastructure. But that's the normal world. The normal world that is Gustav in control of his domain at the hotel. The inciting incident that disrupts this normal world is Madame Zero reads a newspaper that says Madame D has been found dead, maybe murder. And him and Gustav immediately take a train south to not south, I don't know where it was. They immediately take a train to Madame D's a grand estate, which is very clearly a world completely alien to Zero. And they go to the will reading, and the inciting incident, you could say, is her death, but really fundamentally, it is when we find out that she's left a priceless painting to Gustav. And everyone in attendance of the will is absolutely shocked. Who's Gustav H? And here we meet Dimitri, her eldest son, who is very clearly the antagonist in the film. And he sort of represents all the evil of the bourgeoisie in 20th century Europe. Very entitled, very evil, willing to do anything to keep his wealth. And he very clearly says, Gustav, you're never getting that painting. And Gustav, on his way out, or describing the painting to Zero, says, well, let's just take it. That's their response. She left the painting to him in the will, this priceless painting of immeasurable value, and they go and take it for themselves. And as they leave the hotel and as they lock up, they on the train back, Zero and Gustav have this really important conversation where Gustav tells him, I'll make a deal with you. We'll go sell this painting together, sell in the black market, and I'll give you a small percentage of the transaction, but I'll give you everything that I own. You can be my sole beneficiary in my will. So fundamentally, I see some comments about Gustav for Zero being the protagonist. We'll get into that. My reading is that Gustav is the protagonist because he is the one who changes the most in the story. But the first time I watched it, I felt that it was Zero. So anyway, when they get back to the hotel, Gustav is arrested, and this is kind of the end of Act 1. And the objective, very clearly, is to sell Boy with Apple. But in order to do that, they need to burst. Gustav needs to escape prison. I'll go a little faster here. So in Act 2, we establish a bleak, brand new world where Gustav is no longer in control of the Grand Budapest. We have a bleak prison without any comfort, which is very different from Gustav's normal world of, the panache, the perfumes and the elaborate hotel suites and his life of, ornate excess. We meet a bunch of new enemies and friends, Jopling, Henkels, Agatha, Deputy Kovacs, Serge. Well, we met some of these people before, but these are the friends and enemies that really supply the central conflict in Act 2. We go through a series of obstacles where Gustav has to prove himself in prison. He gets into a fight with his now dear friend Pinky. Serge X, who was the man who wrapped the painting for them, and Gustav thought he was a friend, apparently testified against Gustav in court, but he's now as the sole witness that Gustav killed Madame D, and he's now missing. And the police are looking for him, as are the family, Dimitri and his henchman Jopling. And we see very clearly Jopling searches for Serge, and he threatens Serge's sister. Back at the prison, Gustav befriends Ludwig, Harvey Keitel, and they very, very clearly say, we like you, Gustav. We want to get in with you, but we need tools to escape. And they all look to the box of cake that Gustav had brought in previously, Mendel's, and we sort of learn that, they're going to sneak in tools using the cakes. How are they going to do that? Agatha, who is Zero's love interest. And also, it's very important to mention, like, this is the point where we start like flashing back to, or flashing forward to the present day, where Zero is constantly clarifying like what he wants to tell and how much information he, should divulge to Jude Law, the writer. And there's a lot of scenes of characterization that don't necessarily seem central to the plot, but they are important to the characterization, like his backstory with Agatha, which comes out at this moment. But functionally, we go to Dimitri and Jopling, not fundamentally, threatening Deputy Kovacs, the executor of the will, saying, "Don't make any waves. You don't want to mess with us." And Kovacs is very clearly, really shaken by this. They throw his cat out the window, which unfortunately is one of Wes Anderson's cardinal sins against the viewing public, constantly killing pets. Agatha is enlisted in Zero and Gustav's scheme to sell Boy with Apple. She says, very clearly, I'm not offensive, that's the term, but, she loves Zero and she wants to help him in the story. And she's the one who helps them sneak the tools into prison using Mendel's cakes. Jopling kills Kovacs, the executor of the will, and it seems as if, like, well, the family's probably going to win out with this, because their only possible advocate against this injustice is dead, and Gustav is in prison. So we reach the midpoint where, also, I have to say, one of the strange things about this film, in my reading of it, is that the second act is actually the second half of the second act is pretty short functionally, but basically from the midpoint to the end of the second act, it's the prison break. Midpoint is they start their break out of prison. They have to sneak past the guards and sleeping prisoners. They have to scale the walls of the prison. The guards catch them. One of Gustav's friends dies to save everybody, which is a surprisingly gory moment, which I appreciated, because this film seems very, ornate and like mannered in its presentation. But we have this brutal violence in the middle. I love that. That was great. And we go up to what I think, in my opinion, is the most important scene in the entire film, the emotional linchpin of the film, where Zero meets Gustav at the rendezvous point. He's escaped prison, and Gustav says to him, "All right, do you have any disguises?" Zero says, I didn't bring any." "Okay, well then what about the safe house? Do we have a safe house?" "Oh, I couldn't find one." "Oh, okay, understandable. But tell me you have some of my favorite cologne." I forget the name of the cologne. But Zero says, "I forgot the cologne too." And Gustav lashes out at him rather cruelly, saying, like, "What are you good for? Why did you even come to this country that could have done much better without you?" And it's very below the belt. And Zero says to him, this is what I interpret as the moment where Gustav changes the most and their relationship shifts into a new gear, which is why I think it's the most important scene of the film. Zero says to him, the war is why I left and why I came to this country." And Gustav learns that Zero's family were murdered horribly, and Zero didn't want to come to this country as a lobby boy. He was forced to because of the war, and he was a refugee, not just an immigrant. And Gustav's sort of cold, detached, entitled assumptions about Zero and what he wanted, what he came from, based on how he saw the world, were totally flipped on it. And he very quickly apologizes and it sort of says, "Don't make any excuses for me. I'm sorry. I owe you my life. You're my dear friend and protege, and I'm very proud of you. We're brothers," is what Zero says back to him. This is the most important moment in the film for me, because it's the moment where we see Gustav really embrace like an internal change, or at least it's subtle. It is subtle, but it's really important. It's, for me, the emotional core of the film, because it's the arc. It's the arc that sort of powers their bond together, two men coming together as friendship and as brothers into Act 3. And we move very clearly into Act 3. In the film, they label it Part 4, but from a 3-act structure, this is kind of the beginning of Act 3. Gustav calls upon a secret society, a secret concierge society called the Society of the Crossed Keys, and they have this great sequence where they all play telephone with each other, like mobilizing a whole network of these hotel concierge to help get information and resources to help Gustav bounce back and maybe get a chance at justice. Bill Murray has a great moment where he where he picks them up in a car and he gives them the perfume that Gustav so loves and craves. But most importantly, he doesn't just keep it for himself. He shares it with Zero, which is his proof that he's changed and he's willing to accept Zero as an equal, which is really important. And we learn that Serge is hiding at this monastery. Serge, who's the key witness in the person whose whole testimony is the only reason Gustav is on the run and went to prison in the first place. So they go after Serge, and this great sequence where they climb these skiing lifts up the slopes of the Zebrowkin Alps. And when they finally get to the top of the monastery, they meet Serge, and Serge tells them, "There's something I have to tell you. There was a second copy of the second. There was a copy of there was a new will written just days before MedMD died, and I drafted it for her, or I think that's what it was. But functionally, he said, I made a copy of the will, a second copy of the second will that would only be read in the account that she died in a murderous circumstance." And right before he tells Gustav where the second copy of the second will is, curtains close and they find him dead in the confessional booth. This is where they're having this conversation. Gustav and Zero, they see Jopling, Dimitri's goon, running out, and they have this great chase scene where they chase after him and they almost die. And just before Jopling's murders Gustav, Zero saves him, and they escape together with this new knowledge of, that there's a second copy of the second will. This is where we go into the final fight, the final confrontation of the film, where Agatha, Gustav, and Zero all are trying to get back to the functional thing, the objective. They want Boy with Apple. But fascist military forces who are entangled with the Dimitri's powerful family, the Depaxis, or I think that's what their name was, have occupied the hotel where the painting is in a vault. They've got to get into the vault to get the painting. They're all dressed up as the company Mendel's in Mendel's uniforms, and Agatha goes in first, and they're waiting for her in the car because they're both fugitives from justice, or Gustav is more correctly, and Zero's a known associate. Agatha goes in, and she goes to the vault. They see Dimitri's car stop outside, and oh God, we got to help her. Dimitri's going to get Agatha. So they go into the, right after Agatha goes in to the hotel, the whole staff is like doing double takes. Is that Gustav? Is that Gustav? And we see Agatha, she got the painting from the vault. She's in an elevator, and Dimitri slowly gets into the elevator with her. This is what I would categorize as the catastrophic failure of the final fight. It's sort of like, oh my God, he's going to get the painting. He says, he rips open subtly the painting, and he says, pretty picture. And you could tell that she's like really like, oh fuck, oh shit, I've got to get out of here. And she walks out, and he slowly trails behind her. And as she turns the corner, he runs after her. And we have this great sequence where Zero and Gustav confront Dimitri, and they start this huge shootout where all the Nazi, well, not Nazis, but like the fictional Nazi soldiers start this big shootout. Everybody's there's chaos everywhere, and Zero goes to save Agatha, who's fallen out of a window, which is the decisive action. Although it is for Zero does take the decisive action here, and they finally find the second copy of the second will on the back of the painting. And we move into this extended resolution where we find out that Gustav was the beneficiary of the second copy of the second will. He got everything. And there's enough evidence to point that Dimitri was involved with his mother's murder. Well, that we see the section where there's a jury that clearly exonerates Gustav because he's so charming and likable. And they get Boy with Apple. Boy with Apple, the hotel, and this vast fortune is all Gustav's. And we have this fantastic scene that's a parallel to the earlier scene where they're stopped on a train, where you could see that Gustav and Zero are now fully equals in each other's vocation and brothers. Because Zero's now he said Zero and Gustav have this moment. Gustav says, "You're better than I was," which is a sort of a wonderful thing for Gustav to accept and say to somebody. He was so proud of what he did. For him to say that is very meaningful. And he dies. He did not succeed in living long. He dies protecting Zero. And Zero got everything. And we go back to the present day, and we learn that Agatha died, and Zero traded his whole fortune to the fascists to keep this small, unprofitable hotel. And what I think is one of the best moments of the film, Jude Law, or sorry, the writer, asks Zero, present day, why do you keep on the hotel? Why do you still keep it? Is it memory of Gustav? He says, no, there was no need. We shared a vocation. I keep the hotel for Agatha. But there's this wonderful line, because the writer, Jude Law, says, did you keep the hotel as a sort of as a memory of this vanished world that no longer exists? He says, I suspect that his world vanished long before he entered it, but I will say he sustained the illusion with a marvelous grace. And as we leave Zero forever, and we leave the writer who says, I never saw the hotel again, and we go back to the girl in the beginning of the book, we see all these wonderful levels of how stories travel and how forgotten worlds can be sort of accessed through writing and literature. It's a wonderful moment. And that's sort of the conclusion of the core story. We can talk all about whether or not Gustav or Zero are the protagonist. This interpretation posits that Gustav is a protagonist because he has the most clear objective and internal change. But what do you guys think?
Yay!
Nice job. Nice job. By the way, yeah, I said it before and I'll say it again. I literally and figuratively applaud you for taking this on, because it's a very difficult film to break. It's a very difficult. And as I was rewatching it this week, I was thinking of you and thought, okay, I agree with.
Can I address one thing in the comments? Because so there's a great point that's brought up. Could Gustav almost dying and hanging off the ledge be the all is lost moment, albeit very briefly? So yes, the reason why I framed the all is lost moment in my breakdown as being the conversation with Zero is because that's the moment where we see emotional change. And it is strange that there's kind of a down tempo beat after the third act plunge. I do believe that the moment the Cross Keys Society chooses to help them, that's the beginning of Act 3, because it's the big push of momentum to like, okay, now we're going to go towards the rest of the story. But there is a small moment there that you can totally read as an all is lost moment. But I feel like it's more superficial. It's not about the character's journey so much. It's more just sort of like, he's hanging off a cliff. But functionally, him and Zero are brothers from the moment.
And they say so.
Yeah, they say so, which is really important. It's the emotional core of the movie.
Beautiful moment. Yeah. I
just realized that in our tentpole breakdown, we accidentally put All Is Lost at the end of Act 2 instead of at the beginning of Act 3.
I did that intentionally because in this film, that's how that works. I think I did move it.
That's cool.
Like that moment is a conversation. And the act break very clearly happens when the title screen saying Part 4, the Society of the Cross Keys. Like you could tell Wes Anderson was thinking of the act break there. So I feel like the way I would categorize this film, breaks that rule.
Was Gustav also a lobby boy at the beginning of his hotel career? I think that was implied, right?
No, it was because remember early on, Zero asks Gustav,
right,
were you ever a lobby boy?
Lobby boy.
What do you think? And in the conversation at the train at the end, in the beginning, he says, to answer your question, yes, I was. I was considered the best lobby boy that the hotel had ever gotten. But I think this one surpassed me. And he points to Zero.
That's fair. Here's another question. Wouldn't the Joplin fight be the ultimate test?
Yeah, you could talk about it that way, but personally, I feel like this film organizes Act 3's push right. Like I would say the all the momentum from "We're brothers now" to the rest of the movie being framed by the changed characters. If like the way the film feels and the rhythm of it is like it's an all or nothing to final fight. A lot of things happen, but this is a difficult film to classify because it doesn't totally follow the beats clearly.
Yeah, and wouldn't you say, Adam? I mean, one of the things that I've seen this film a couple times now. Wes Anderson clearly loves story, and that's why it's a story, and a story about it's a a writer being told a story.
Yeah.
All of this nuance. This is someone. And he plays with it. I think it's very, very well refined. One other quick thing is that it's interesting. Wes Anderson is such a unique talent that probably the studios financing his films. There's a moment when they take a leap, and they go, "We
John,
don't know what."
John, I actually have insight into this. So Indian Paintbrush is funded by this billionaire, the company, and he basically has just decided to bankroll all of Wes Anderson's films, no questions asked.
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
So and this happened. This happened with Fantastic Mr. Fox on, or no, not after Fantastic Mr. Fox. So Moonrise Kingdom on, where he had 2 bombs. Fantastic Mr. Fox was a failure, and Darjeeling Limited was his worst performing and critically panned film ever. It's also not very. It's kind of racially weird. Got some weird depictions of India. So wouldn't recommend it. But after those 2 failures, he sort of found a billionaire to bankroll him.
I need to fail and get a billionaire. Man.
That's it. Yeah, because and by the way, well then that emphasizes what I was going to say is that, and but you do see it with filmmakers like the Coen brothers and Malick and these and Anderson, that you can't read this script and know it's going to work. What you're counting on is the idiosyncratic nature of this filmmaker and the fact that every frame is going to be just gorgeous. Also, yeah. Also,
some really funny jokes coming in about. So he has a film sugar daddy.
Yeah, the film sugar daddy. And by the way, if you can get one, grab one. But also on that note, and then I'll shut up and go back to Adam. But on that note, you can imagine that Wes Anderson maybe it's Wes Anderson, Tilda Swinton, William Dafoe, Harvey Keitel, and he says, I only need you for, Tilda Swinton, I'm guessing he shot her out in 3 days.
Probably.
Harvey Keitel in 1 day. William Dafoe shot him out in 3 or 4 days. But the fact that these actors will sign on to be in the film when there's nothing to the role, or I should say very little to the role. Certainly also, it's not a lead. It's not a lead.
John, he paid, none of the actors made more than SAG minimum.
Can you imagine?
He's bankrolled by a billionaire and can't pay his people.
Well, no, he pays the crew, but like,
and also, and the money he's spending is on the screen. The money is
only cost $30 million.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Like how much value and how incredible it looks. Like that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it looks like $150 million film.
Yeah.
I wanted to look at this page real quick.
Yeah, look at that. That's hard to read.
Yeah.
This is the opening. This is the first page.
Yeah. He doesn't give a fuck. Also, he wrote the script in 6 weeks.
It's based on a book. It's based on a book, yes?
It's not based on a book. It's based on an author. So it's a fictional story that would have been like what the author did. And he just name-checked the author, being like, I was inspired by this.
Yeah. He's breaking all kinds of rules for 2 reasons. One is he's Wes Anderson, and the other is that he's going to direct it.
Yeah, and also he did a shot-for-shot animatic of the entire film with him doing the voices of all the characters, and he shared that with all the actors. He's saying, "This is the movie. I've edited already. This is what it is."
See? That's extra. John, in case you're wondering about the definition of extra.
Yeah, that's extra. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But look at these parentheticals. Like it only works because of who he is and like his way of making these things. But like it is so much.
It's a lot.
But the cast is extraordinary. God.
Yeah. Was Saoirse Ronan at this point? Like was she like
it was early Saoirse.
Early.
Yeah, so
I remember she was saying
she's marvelous.
She was very nervous about doing this style of acting. Like that's so specific and so tailored because he practically does line readings with the actors.
I mean, it's just and Bill Murray. Bill Murray he's got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The screenplay wasn't meant to be read is really the point. It was a plan. He knew exactly what he wanted to shoot. So you have to think the vast majority of screenplays and what we advocate for you to write are readable screenplays. This he said he knew he was going to make it. He knew exactly what it was going to be. The thing is, this was just a bloop. It's just like it was for him and for the team. It wasn't for people to get financing. So you have to look at that way.
And I have to piggyback on Adam's note just real quickly that you don't want to write this script or you don't want to put it on the page in this way unless you're Wes Anderson because as we've discussed previously, nobody's going to read this.
Just John, just to build off that. So his early scripts are so readable and pleasurable to read.
Oh, interesting.
The script, when he was breaking it, he can write a really tight, well-written screenplay with perfect narrative description. Like
he just doesn't have to anymore.
Exactly. So, like, if you guys ever want to read a great Wes Anderson script, Rushmore is a fantastic.
Rushmore is a great film.
Great film, great script.
I'll see if we have the script. I'll link to it.
It looks way more readable and it's great. So great movie. It's my favorite Wes Anderson movie is Rushmore.
Wait, I took my head. What Rushmore?
It's my favorite. That's my number.
I love that film.
Yeah, I need to watch it.
The end where they slow dance and
it's beautiful.
It's so and everybody dances in slow motion and it's like all the characters from the film. So sweet. Anyway, sorry, John, what were you saying?
No, I just want to make that point that if you're looking at the script and thinking how marvelous it is, remember.
So Abdullah brought in really good question earlier that I actually have the answer to. So,
is it when he said role play as Wes Anderson?
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say that, but I will tell you, I know what his writing process is. He always works with co-writers, always, but he's the only one who types. He has long conversations about the characters and the stories with people. His first co-writer was Owen Wilson. They wrote Royal Tenenbaums, Rushmore, and Bottle Rocket together. And then he wrote with Noah Baumbach. They wrote 2 movies together.
Wow.
They wrote Life Aquatic. Not a very good movie, but they wrote it. Okay, some people love it, but they wrote it together in an Italian restaurant, having conversations. And Wes would go take the conversations and then type up the scenes that they talked about. That's how he writes, and he writes very quickly. Typically, like he doesn't spend that long. It takes him about 2 months to write, but he spends a lot of time coming up with the characters and the ideas before he actually sets out to write.
And he clearly sees the movie. He shot the movie. It's like Hitchcock. He has shot the movie before they go to the set.
I just posted the link to Rushmore in case anybody wants to check it out later.
Alexie,
not the script.
Alexie, can you turn your volume down just a notch?
Is it loud?
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
No. Who knew?
Either that or you're just screaming and trying to be annoying. I don't know.
Is this better? Possible. I was going to say that's possible that I am screaming.
But either turn the volume down or be less annoying. I don't know. Whichever. I mean, it's up to you. It's your call. It's your call, really.
Is this better?
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah, that's fine. You're
great.
It's better. Does it have a mute?
I have an annoying dial right here. I'll just turn it down a little bit.
Yeah, it's turned up to 12, I guess, but that's okay.
Getting back to writing the film. So
getting back at me for his Ohio shirts, apparently.
Oh my God.
So so much of what's special about this movie is the relationships and these callbacks to earlier established moments. This train scene, we get 2 train scenes. We get 2 scenes with the perfume. We get 2 scenes, like we get so many little callbacks that are emotionally powerful in the end.
So something that I think
so symmetrical. Yes, you're absolutely right. I've noticed this. Wes Anderson film. He's balancing.
Yeah, and I pulled this up because it's symmetrical too in the script. Like Adam was talking about these callbacks and stuff and how it like they always come back. And it was at the same time that I read this, and I was like, "Oh, that's a little meta."
And Adam hit on something that, you know, early on when he's saying, "Did you go to school? Have you done this?" No, no, no. Also, Adam, you know, I think you left one out. He said, "Family."
Oh, family, 0. Yeah.
And 0 doesn't answer. And
no, he says, yeah, 0.
And 0 doesn't answer. And so we know, we intuit from that, oh, these 2, which is what happens, they become family because neither of them
has anybody.
And it's a beautiful moment that's played out when we talk about the family in the late second act and what happened to them. But I love that moment. Family, no answer, no family. They're both you could argue they're both orphans.
So if we talk about, oh yeah.
So this is an interesting note. So the story clock is this technique that we talk about a little bit in the feature course. There's like a more complicated version that's all crazy, but basically the idea is that if you map out a story or a screenplay on a circle so that a full rotation of the clock represents all 100 whatever pages of your screenplay, then generally speaking, stuff that is diagonally across from each other on the circle are opposites. So if you do something over here, like I used Jojo Rabbit to explain it, so that's what's fresh in my head. But like if you do something over here where it's like we see Jojo getting this knife, then over here he's using the knife. You know, so it's all these things that are setting up, and I have a feeling that Theo is onto something, and that that if we mapped out Wes Anderson films, they'd be pretty.
Yeah, I think
pretty dead on.
I will say there is. I saw Q&A. I was at a Q&A with him once. And somebody asked him this really great question about the writing process of the film. He said, and it was really funny. He said, "Well, this is sort of the film where I discovered how to write a plot." He said that as a joke. He said, like, you know, it's 9 movies, and this is the first time I actually wrote a conventional film with a plot. Because if you think about it, a lot of his earlier films are like, there are a bunch of things happen. It's so character driven. It's all about the characters and these scenes with the characters. This actually has like an objective, the painting and the will behind the painting. And like it has conventional external plot devices here. So I would say this film isn't a lot like his other films story-wise, probably for the better in some ways.
Yeah, I think so.
Like Darjeeling Limited, they're just on a train.
Yeah, you want to get off that train, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, okay, it wasn't the worst film, but it was not very good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, this is interesting. Ken says, Wes Anderson, the architectural filmmaker.
Absolutely, good note. Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
He's also one of the few filmmakers who really understands that the production design is more important than the cinematography a lot of the time, or is as important. Like what a lot of indie filmmakers don't realize is that, yeah, the production designer is like the things that are being filmed, and your film isn't going to look great or natural or real unless the things you're filming are interesting. Like, do you have good actors with interesting faces that look good? You know, like you just having some nobody, you know, it's not the same as like great sets that are designed a certain way. Oh, this is what I wrote.
Yeah, I was pulling this up because we had this question come up. Is there one tangible objective to the film or multiple?
Yeah, it's
I kind of think that the objective could just be simplified down to sell Boy with Apple. That's it. You know, I think to me that's the
well, and they also have to get Boy with Apple because
Yeah, so it's basically just like boy with apple, but then they like briefly have it and then they lose it. So I was adding the cell. I don't think necessarily escape from prison is like. No, I think that's more like a escape from.
He has that's just from prison to sell boy with apple.
To sell boy with apple. It's just prison is just an obstacle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wrote this 2 hours ago. So.
By the way, is Gustav where I don't I'm looking, but is he's vain, yes, and so he kind of his resolution, I think you could say, is that he becomes humble, right? He learns humility, maybe.
Well, he learns humility by I think it's by seeing Zero as his equal.
Yeah. Yes, like and he says, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. So a lot of people want to talk about let's see. Want to talk about the idea of Gustav and Zero as protagonists, and what do we think there? Let's remove this.
Also, I just want to say to everybody, like my interpretation is not necessarily correct. I feel like if I spend a little bit more time with it, I would tweak a few things. Like somebody brought up a great point. Like, is he really obsessed with social status? I feel like that's true, but it's not necessarily his flaw. I think it's just more of like he likes being near a certain class of person, like which is what the perfume symbolizes, in my opinion. But that's just my read.
Yeah, I mean, Adam and I before you were like about to break this down, we had a quick conversation about, is it Zero, is it Gustav? Because I think that there's a way to break it both ways, but
because
the thing that
storyteller, Zero's the storyteller.
Yeah,
and the thing that ultimately pushed it over for me though was that Zero is taking Gustav's lead. Like Gustav tells Zero what to do and Zero's doing it for the most part. And it's really Gustav is the one who gets the painting and wants the painting and is like prioritizing that objective. And so in my mind, that makes him the protagonist because like the objective is what's pulling them through. And though Zero might have a stronger change, like he might have a more obvious arc. I think that it just depends on what you prioritize, I guess. And in general, to pick a protagonist, I would prioritize who's actively pursuing the objective.
Yes.
Right. And you know, with all these films, and as I said, you know, Adam, very brave to take on this film because it's a very demanding film to break. But what we're doing here, and I hope, and I think it is working. Based on comments and questions, I think it's working. But what you do when you're analyzing story is you become more sophisticated, almost unwittingly. You become more sophisticated as a storyteller and as a writer, so that when you are breaking your story, you're asking the right questions of your story, and then you answer them as you will. But to be informed and be educated as a storyteller is so important, because it's not just as simple as fade in, start writing. You know, that we know. So Adam, I think, did a great job breaking this. Do you have it exactly right? Are there changes? Yes, but the point is, analyze stories and then use that information to inform yourself.
And I think that sometimes.
No, go.
Me go?
You go.
I was going to say, I think that sometimes too, a writer may not be thinking of these. I think, you know, writers don't necessarily think of their script in the same way that it maybe ends up in the end. And I think that that's the case with like I don't necessarily, like in Up, I don't know if they were writing Russell as the antagonist, but that's the way that it kind of shook out, right? And like, I think there was a different film, Adam, it was a recent one that you and I did, where I was saying like, oh, E.T. We were talking about E.T. and like who's the antagonist and stuff like that. And you were saying like, well, you know that your point was kind of like the writers were definitely writing it this way. You know, like you can kind of tell what the intention was, and sometimes it doesn't line up with the final film.
Right.
And you know, there's different ways to interpret it, and it's all just about trying to analyze it.
And by the way, as you know, we're watching all these films and these filmmakers, and you just mentioned a Pixar movie and Spielberg, they all bring different nuances and sensibilities to the form. Pixar, by the way, as far as I can tell, they don't make a mistake.
Cars 2 was a mistake.
But then Cars 3 was, no, Toy Story 3 was, it's genius. I mean, but generally speaking, I mean,
their batting average is extremely high, but they
the Pixar gang. And by the way, they break the film. That if you're going to look at a paradigm for flawless structure, you could go to almost any Pixar film.
So here's a quick. Oh, did you want to say something else, Adam?
No, I want to address this question. So can a protagonist only be a protagonist if he's not being commanded by somebody else? Let me describe our definition of protagonist, which I think is probably the most useful one from a writer's point of view. So we would define a protagonist as the two attributes of a protagonist. One, they're the character with the objective that drives the story forward. The protagonist's tangible objective is what gives all of the direction and momentum of Act 2. So one, you would say the protagonist is the character with the central objective in the story. Two, the protagonist is the character who must change or at least have an arc in the story. So that's a protagonist.
And part of the objective thing is that they must be active. Like if you have and like in general, passive protagonists don't work. I mean, films will get made breaking all these rules. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a good decision, but in general, good protagonists are active. And I think that Gustav is the most active in this.
He's the one who, I feel like the argument you could make for him being the protagonist and Zero not being the protagonist is that it's all the inciting incident happens to Gustav, and Gustav is the one who's threatened, and Gustav is the one put in prison, and Gustav is the one who has to get out of prison. Zero helps. That's a terrible movie.
That was a response to John saying that Pixar doesn't make a mistake. The Good Dinosaur has.
By the way, I don't even know that. Is that a Pixar film? I don't even know.
It is, and they buried it.
So I will say,
they buried it.
After Disney bought Pixar, their batting average got a lot worse.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, they're great. Inside Out was amazing.
And by the way, that book called Creativity Inc. Creativity Inc.
Oh yeah, that's really good.
Is a terrific book, and it's about Pixar and the Pixar process.
It's good on Audible.
I've read it. It's really good.
I audibled it.
There are a lot of good questions. There are a lot of good questions. One I want to answer is Abdullah's question about what the verdict of the genre is for this film. And Wes Anderson's films are all the same genre. Every Wes Anderson film feels the same. And that's a good thing in my view. Like you go to his, like they're different flavors, different experiences, but like they're all dramedies. All of them are dramedies. I would call this a dramedy. They're all funny. All Wes Anderson films aspire to be funny or are funny. He doesn't do straight drama. He doesn't do horror. He combines elements of things, but what's the core promise of the story? This is a happy, sad, right?
But there's always heart. He always has heart to his film.
Yeah. So here's a good question to go back to the protagonist. Question from Abdullah also. Yes, but the protagonist does not kill Jopling. Shouldn't he have pushed him over the ledge? Yeah. And I think that's a note John would have gave if Wes Anderson was in his class.
Yeah.
So Act 3 of this movie, is really weird. Yeah. If I was writing this film, but here's the thing. If you followed the conventions, I think it wouldn't have been as good. Like, it really worked out. His plan really worked out. Like, ideally, you would have had Gustav involved with the final fight. Zero was the one at the final fight. Zero was the one who was more active in the third act. But Act 1 and Act 2 are all about Gustav. So
and Abdullah, your point's well taken. Yes, I mean that. By the way, it's exactly the way you traditionally would break that story.
Yeah. So here's a question that I think will amuse John.
Okay.
Would you say that family is the save the cat moment, or does Wes Anderson enjoy killing cats because he hates that theory?
No, he killed a cat in this movie. Because he killed a dog in the last movie, and he's killed He's killed dogs so often in his movies. It's kind of become a joke, to the point where his last film was literally, the name of it is Isle of Dogs. I Love Dogs.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
Like,
that is so much work for a joke. That is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for a joke.
Oh, but John, hey John, how do you feel about Save the Cat?
Alexie knows me too well. I am not a fan of Save the Cat. That book. Don't read that book. Don't read that book. Because Blake Snyder. Yeah. Blake, who's deceased. Sadly, I didn't say that with any glee. I knew Blake back in the day, and he just kind of blows out second act. Like, don't worry about the second act, which, by the way, is the most difficult damn thing about writing a script. And he kind of goes, yeah, I think it'll take care of itself. Which
doesn't he call it like not. Fun and games or something?
Fun and games, just bullshit. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's just, I hate that. But I mean, nobody should read that. Oh God. Well, it's too late. I said it.
John, it was the first screenwriting book I ever read. Was Save
everybody. I mean, and by the way, after Blake, explain this to me. I think this is accurate. After Blake died, he died very young. After he died, there's a Save the Cat 2. I don't know who wrote that.
There's Save the Cat as a novel also.
No,
like for novel writing.
I mean, Blake kind of hit the mother load with that book. I don't know. Maybe I'm just jealous.
It's because
it's a terrible book.
I mean, it isn't very good. But
I agree with this. Blank Check is amazing. Cinematic masterpiece.
I wouldn't go quite that far, but Blake was a funny guy. Blake was very, very charismatic and really good in the room. And Blank Check was a script he wrote that got made.
And
I liked. Oh, go ahead.
He has a chapter devoted to making the case that Miss Congeniality is a better movie than Memento. And it seems like,
okay,
man, you've got an grind,
By the way, that makes my point. You just put an exclamation point on my point. Yeah.
Oh, hey, Adam.
He kind of just wrote that book, and it had a good title and a good cover.
It had a great cover.
What were you going to say, Alexie?
Good title, great cover. What was between the covers was not very good.
John, you got to write your response.
But
kill the cat.
Kill the fucking cat. No. So anyway, I'll shut up.
I think
Alexie set me up there, by the way. Everybody should know. Alexie set me up because she knows that's catnip for me.
That's because one of the first things in your class that happened was we found out that your cousin went to my high school. And then I said something about how do you feel about Save the Cat? And you were like, ugh. And I was like, wow, I guess I'm screwed here.
I don't think I went, ugh, but maybe I did.
It was like your vibe was very ugh. You know, you were like.
Let's get back to.
Let's get back to Adam. Let's get back to Adam, please.
Well, real quick, I wanted to bring this up here because I think that this is a point that Adam makes. The only protagonists that don't have to change are Brendan Fraser and Paddington. The world changes around them. The world around them changes, but Brendan Fraser tends to stay the same.
So John, I've never really talked with you about this, but I've talked with Alexie. I do think that there are stories where the protagonist doesn't change, but they're very rare. And Paddington 2 is the example. But they're not stories where nobody changes. It's usually the protagonist is the inner need of the movie. Like the entire world is flawed and the world changes because of the protagonist. So
absolutely.
So there are rare movies like that.
There are rare. Yes, there are. Yes, absolutely.
There was so many funny. Adam, I tried to send you this, but Hugh Grant recently, there's all these articles about him and his ungrateful children not liking Paddington 2. And they have the funniest titles for the articles. So this one is, if Hugh Grant's children talk smack about Paddington 2, quote, they don't get fed.
Oh my God. So
no,
John, have you seen Paddington 2?
I have not.
Incredible movie. It is so good.
Really?
It's a children's film. Don't remember. It's a children's film, but it's great.
Okay.
There was another really funny one.
It's the highest rated film on Rotten Tomato.
Oh, here's a lovely review.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Here's this review called How Paddington 2 Warmed America's Cold, Cold Heart. Did a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was all these, I sent you them, Adam, and I know you didn't look, but it's okay. I sent you these like hilarious articles about Hugh Grant's kids like hating, like
Adam,
not appreciating Paddington
What are you doing? What are you doing that you're not reading everything that Alexie sends you? What are you?
I know. What is more
where
important?
Are your priorities?
Than my
I read every
tweets
other
I
thing.
forward
Why
you.
aren't you reading Paddington 2 reviews? I mean, have you got better things to do than read Paddington 2 reviews?
John,
Nobody does.
You know what it's like when you're not really listening to somebody, but you're just waiting for your turn to speak. That's what.
Yeah.
Rude.
You're just waiting for them to take a breath, a pause, so you can.
The moment she said, she brought up Paddington 2, which is like a recurring joke with us. I was immediately like sent her like 5 texts, and I said, it's the highest rated film on Rotten Tomatoes.
There we go. Hugh Grant's ungrateful children hate Paddington 2. Was the article I sent you. I love it.
My heart. You're breaking my
heart.
I'll read it. You're breaking my heart.
I didn't actually read it. I read.
By the way, Hugh Grant has kids. Okay.
Apparently, and they're ungrateful.
Let's get back to Wes Anderson.
Fine, Wes Anderson.
So there's a good question. One of the best things about the film is the rich, fantastical setting of fake places and titles. Any tips for that type of uniquely creative world-building writing? So this film, the one thing I'll say, unless you guys have to say something, a comment. So the choice to make this film with intentional anachronisms, meaning like the actors speaking with their natural accents instead of the sort of a vague fake German or Eastern European accent, any historical accuracy, having fake Nazis, having a fake country. These are all like choices to sort of, I think, that help tell the story, in that it's about nostalgia. It's about remembering a world that never existed. And I think the fact that this world didn't exist wasn't just an arbitrary choice. It was actually tied to the idea and the theme of the story. So if you want to like make like a fantastical fake Europe, have a story where that's justified. Don't just do it arbitrarily.
In terms of like, oh, go ahead, John.
I agree. And by the way, I mean, this world, we know 3 minutes in, the world that he's creating, that Wes Anderson's creating for us, and what's one of the miraculous things about the film is that he never falls off that point. It's a world he's created. It's consistent and true throughout the film. And by the way, the danger is, if you don't get it, if you don't buy into the world, if you're not willing to follow the characters who live in this fantasy world, then you're out of the movie. But it's a really good question, because to sustain it, to sustain that tone, the little cakes, Mendel's cake, all of that. It's all, you've heard me say this before, but it's fitting here. It's all of a piece. And I would say, in answer to that question, it's got to be all of a piece. You've got to the cakes, the prison break, all of it. When they stop twice in the middle of nowhere in Russia, it's all consistent with the tone. And that's, know when you're going into a fantasy world, a world building, that is the demand, that you remain consistent and true to that world, authentic to that world. And it's the demanding thing to do.
Yeah. Practically, one of the things that helps me the most for world building is if I want to write a script that's in a completely different world, then generally, this is just like very practical, but generally I have a notebook that's just for building out that world. And I'll spend a lot of time doing like research and digging and building out tons of different things about this world. And, you fill out tons of pages and like a story. For me, sometimes I build the world first and then I find the story in it. And that's just how I think. But, go ahead, John.
No, you go.
I was just saying that the biggest thing that has helped me with world building is really remembering that like the world of your film extends way beyond your screenplay, right? Like if like you have like a piece of paper and that is like the map of your world, you're only showing people like a small section of it at a time, and the rest of it is there and implied and helps make your story feel real. And I think that audiences can pick up that you know the rest, even if you're only showing them a little. So it's like being willing to not jam everything that you've done into the script because you feel like it's useless, like, or like it feels like it's wasted otherwise. Like knowing all those details will show up, will like matter, even if they don't end up on the page.
And it matters for you as the writer. So yes, it doesn't have to be on the page. One of the things that I've used in the past, and I would recommend, is photographs and paintings and pictures of paintings. Having those around you, having those on your corkboard or whatever, you know, but using those to remember that when you go to work in the morning, immersing yourself into this Grand Budapest, to this world where people dressed a certain way, their manners are heightened, all of that, and photographs might sometimes help. Having those to make yourself familiar and reinform yourself that I'm leaving the world that I live in. I'm going into this world for the next however many hours you're writing.
And I think the like social media version of that today would be that you start a Pinterest board and basically keep it as your mood board for the film. And you just collect a bunch of photos on there. Is helpful.
Did you guys notice that Boy with Apple was askew in the concierge in the 1960s? Totally behind Jason Schwartzman. That was right in the front lobby, totally just sitting there.
Oh,
I didn't.
And, and he's just sitting there, like smoking cigarettes, not giving a shit. And it's like off skew, it's totally just sort of thrown to the side. Nobody gives a shit. And it was also on the menus when it's the design on the menus. It's the details like that like are
brilliant.
Also, just to find.
So he didn't get rid of his fortune. Why didn't he sell that shiz? He's like, oh, I lost my whole fortune. You still got that painting, though.
He sacrificed the fortune to keep the hotel, and paintings are only worth what people pay for them. You know, you don't know if like a painter who's celebrated in one era might not be celebrated in another.
I feel like if that painting realistically survived a war, it would be worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
By the way, the problem, the operative word in that sentence is realistically. Because this is not a realistic world.
But they're in a communist authoritarian country like the Soviet Union or whatever that this was trying to be like. Paintings there was no real black market for paintings, really. You have to think supply and demand. If there's no bourgeoisie with money to buy art, it's out, and all property is public property, there's no infrastructure for that.
Yeah. Before we at some point, Alexie, if we have time for an anecdote about World War II art, I've got one at the end.
Wait,
not right now.
You don't want to do it right now?
Well, we had a good question. What was that question?
Oh no, it was just saying that
questions.
It was Martine was saying, I think I got that right this time. I'm psyching myself out. Zero actually uprights the painting later in the movie.
Yes.
Actually, and I have just a quick Wes Anderson anecdote that I got from the director's commentary for Royal Tenenbaums, which is that he got in a fight with Gene Hackman in one of the scenes because Gene Hackman didn't like him at all. But he got in a fight with Gene Hackman where he was shooting on the south side of Manhattan, where you have the view of the Statue of Liberty, and he wanted Gene Hackman to stand in the way. He didn't want the Statue of Liberty in the shot. And Gene Hackman was like, "Why don't you want the Statue of Liberty in the shot?" He says, "I don't want to have it be grounded in this Manhattan." And he thought that was the stupidest thing he'd ever heard in his life. But it's kind of consistent with this. Like, he wanted his fantasy version of New York. Having the Statue of Liberty in the background grounds it with too much history. It's choices like that, you know?
Yeah. No, he's a filmmaker unto himself. I mean, he's got his vision, and it's his vision. Yeah.
So here's a question, Adam, which I feel like you know the answer to. Anyone know if Wes Anderson wrote a shooting script? Adam said he wrote the script we read just for him because he knew he would be directing it. However, no camera angles.
He doesn't write with camera angles. He just does the camera angles in a animatic.
He just like knows.
Yeah, he knows.
Let's
also,
see.
like it's like, what's the point of in 2020? Let's just be totally real. What's the point of putting camera angles in a script? You can do these amazing there's so many great tools for storyboards. Just go straight to storyboards. Like, don't fuck around writing in wide angle. It's not the best way to communicate that information. Like, just make a storyboard. Yeah. So many great resources.
Oh yeah, here we go. Sandra says that he actually draws little thumbnails for shot ideas, but I don't know if he thumbnails every page. That makes sense with this animatic, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure he does. He's done many things over the years, but now he has like this really involved. Zero is the mentor.
Ty's got a great one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I define Zero as the mentor because he's the one who teaches and forces Gustav to. He's the other end of the relationship. He's the one who forces Gustav to change and become brothers with him. Like, he's the catalyst for Gustav changing.
And what's beautiful about that is that it's a flip. Is that the younger understudy is the mentor, and that's counterintuitive, and yet kind of beautiful.
Yeah,
Carl
great
just
choice.
texted me that I'm still loud.
Did they say, were you still annoying or just loud? What did they say?
He said Carl did not
Now
say that.
you're really
annoying.
loud. Now you got louder. What?
I got louder. Now I'm quieter.
Well, now you're right next to on top of the microphone.
Alexie,
what?
So the way it works is that the closer you are to the microphone, the louder your voice will sound.
Oh wow! Really, Adam?
You know, as he started into that, I thought he's not going to go all the way there. He's going to pull out, but no, he went all the way in.
He committed.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, how's he going to back out of this?
God.
But he didn't back out at all. He just
Adam doesn't back out.
Yeah, he went straight for the big vein.
Alexie,
man.
I'm curious to hear what you thought about this movie a little bit more, because, you know, it's your first Wes Anderson movie. You didn't have as many preconceptions as maybe John and I have seeing his
Is my mic accessible now?
You sound great.
Is it? Do I?
Yeah.
Is it too loud?
It's not that loud to me. It's too loud.
Is there a Tracy flick on the knob? Yeah.
I'll just go full Tracy flick.
Full Tracy flick. Yeah. Does anybody know what we're talking? Yeah. Anyway.
I think people might know. Who knows? Yeah. I liked it. I mean, like, I enjoyed it. Hey, wait. That reminds me of this. I thought about this earlier today, and I'd completely. Remember that? He likes it.
Yeah.
I can't remember what film it was, John, but you kept just saying like, I like it.
It was Bridget Jones.
Bridget Jones.
Yeah. Bridget
I like
Jones.
it.
So
I like
what did you not, Alexie, what did you not like about it?
No, I did like it. I actually did like it. I just said that like I didn't.
Right. I know. I'm just curious. I want to hear like because it's so rare for me to like listen to like talk to a writer person who like hasn't experienced his work before and had intense opinions about it. I know
you got to watch Rushmore, Alexie. You got to watch Rushmore.
I know. I need to.
It's his best movie in my opinion because it's his least affected, but also well considered. But so many writers I know who I respect dislike him actively because of the way he writes class. And the criticism I would say of Wes Anderson is his characters are very unaffected. Like there's a basic presumption of wealth. Like a lot of his characters are just inexplicably wealthy. Not all of them, but like Rushmore, he's a kid who doesn't have money in a school full of kids who do, and that's like a part of the story. But like a lot of people I know like dislike his presentation of and focus on white upper class society and sort of fetishizing it.
Yeah, so. I mean, I think this Winter's Bone. This is not, it's a little. It's like it's kind of got some like pretentious vibes, and I feel like that was my first thing that I thought when I saw whatever the Moonrise Kingdom. But this time it didn't bother me. Like it didn't stand out to me as much, which was surprising because I remember watching Moonrise Kingdom and being like, I can't pay attention to what they're doing because this is just so much. Like, this whole thing is just so stylized that, like, I don't know what they're doing. Like, and this time it didn't feel that way to me. I don't know if I'm just, like, in a different place or if it's not as intense or, like, what the deal is there. My biggest complaint is that there wasn't more Saoirse Ronan.
Yeah, I feel like she was underutilized, I think.
She was.
Greta
Gerwig, is that what you mean?
No, the character.
Her name was Agatha.
Agatha, sorry.
Greta Gerwig took full advantage of Saoirse Ronan, so props to her.
So there's some quite good questions. Is that the definition of the mentor? The person who is the catalyst for the protagonist change? Yeah, so I would define the mentor as the character who has the answer, the inner need, who knows the inner need and helps the protagonist obtain their inner need.
Yeah, and I would also, I agree, and I would add to it that the mentor is the protagonist's better self. So if your better self is not realized, the mentor understands and appreciates that, but doesn't want to do too much because they want the protagonist to find his or her resolution on their own.
Mm-hmm.
No. Also, another question: was this film successful? Yes, this was his most financially successful film, made over $150 million. It's very successful.
Right. Very successful. I was writing out that I will figure out my mic some other.
Also, and also him dying at the end was good. Like, that was what made it great. It was like, oh, that sense.
What about the choice to do that off screen?
It was powerful. It was better because it was the end.
You like it?
The plot had. If we had seen it, it would have sort of taken away power. It was a moment of, like, and it worked because he was remembering the past, and it was because it was a conversation. Like, the fact that he said in the end they shot him, as kind of offhanded, was like kind of what was brutal about when somebody's telling you a painful memory, when somebody's digging through the past. Like, it felt authentic to the fact that these are two men reliving the past that doesn't exist anymore. Like, in that context, having him dying after everything as a throwaway line is, like, powerful. It's great.
Cool. Let's see.
If they didn't kill him, it would have, I don't know.
That's true. It would have been weird if he wasn't dead. He had to go.
He had to go.
If they don't serve your story, kill him. Right, John?
Kill him. Kill your darling.
Kill him, literally.
Kill them all.
Kill their children, because Zero's daughter died.
That was effed up.
Yeah,
I was like, how dare you kill Saoirse Ronan off screen and her child?
Yeah, that was pretty terrible. But it was for the same reason. It was kind of like, oh, she died from, like, some small disease that we cure easily nowadays. Like, it was kind of like, I don't know, it helped, like, reinforce that this was all kind of lost to time.
Didn't he have to be alone? Didn't he have to be alone at the end?
Yeah.
He had to be alone. That's the whole weight of the story, and then he goes back to that room. That's the beauty of this. That's the symmetry of the film. Yeah.
So here we go.
Yeah,
Adam, I was just editing your anti-hero videos. I feel like this is all very fresh. But Tig asks, I think that's how you say that. Let me know if I'm wrong. What if the protagonist is an anti-hero and the changes that they become more evil, like in There Will Be Blood, Nightcrawler, Godfather? Can the mentor be a bad change? Can
the mentor be a bad change? What was that last sentence?
Can the mentor, like, basically push for bad change?
Oh.
And so the way that I find helpful to think about anti-heroes is that basically you're flipping their flaw and inner need. Like, a lot of times in a film, a traditional hero will go from selfless to selfish, or selfish to selfless. Yeah.
Right.
And then with an anti-hero, you basically flip it. So you're going from what I said, where I messed up, from selfless to selfish. So in that case, typically you can have a mentor go either way, I suppose, but the mentor would generally push them towards selfish. So, like in The Godfather, that's what happened.
Yeah.
So the Godfather, the mentor is Don Corleone. The Godfather is his mentor, because he's the one who. So the whole his inner need in the film is to give up his honesty for family, right? In the beginning, he's an honorable war hero who says to his fiance, "That's my family, Kay.
No, it's not me.
That's not me." And in the last shot of the film, he lies to Kay, and
he's become
on her.
Yeah. So I just want to. I think we're all on the same page, but I just want to say that. But you have to be very careful that the protagonist, when an anti-hero, as he or she gets to their culminating choice, they get to the moment where they can correct their flaw. They choose not to. So it's a choice, and as is true with the more traditional hero. The mentor doesn't make that choice for them. They make the choice. So Michael in The Godfather, Michael is going to be a monster. The beauty of The Godfather, of course, is that he's a bigger monster than his father ever was. Hurt Locker, I've talked about. I think Hurt Locker he's a war junkie. He gets the opportunity to go home and be a family man and be a husband and a father to an infant. And what's he choose to do? He goes back to war. He abandons his family. So he makes the choice. I can correct my flaw. The anti-hero. It's a beautiful archetype, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I find it helpful to think of it as like that they have a positive flaw. You know, it's like that their flaw is that they're selfless, and then over the course of the film, that gets challenged, and they resolve their flaw by becoming selfish or something like that. It works often, and it's
God, yeah,
it's really cool.
But let's just comment for a second. The reason why we advocate for that is because the alternative is so boring. You don't want somebody to just sort of, okay, they're bad, and they just sort of get worse. It's less contrast, and human beings are we're primed to be interested in contrast, and stories that feature contrast, great.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Breaking Bad was, I mean, that's a series, obviously, but that was a big example of an anti-hero where a guy starts off like a good person and then resolves that flaw pretty quickly.
Although you could argue that he always had that
in him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It comes out.
Yeah.
I tried watching it recently, and it was, do you know how often they eat breakfast in that show?
Really?
I didn't know that.
20% of the show. So the only time you see his son is when they're having breakfast.
And he goes to school. Yeah. Okay.
No, but the only time we actually see him and have him talk, he's constantly having these breakfast scenes.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
They have breakfast so often.
They sit down to have breakfast?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
What the heck?
It's weird. If you go through the whole series, I'm sure if you do a compilation of all the breakfast scenes, it's a lot of narrative.
That's not realistic. Sitting down to have breakfast every single... No.
Yeah. Nope. No family does that.
I don't buy it.
What broken families do you come from? Yeah.
Get McDonald's on the way to school.
Exactly. Chick-fil-A. Not that I advocate for Chick-fil-A, but that was our thing. I'd pick me and my brother up Chick-fil-A on the way to school.
I've never been.
What?
I
haven't either. I've never been to Chick-fil-A. I think it closed, didn't it? Why are we talking?
No.
I passed one today, and there was a line around the block in cars.
Maybe you went on a Sunday, John.
Is it just... No, I never went, but yeah, okay, fine. Yeah.
Oh, man. Let's see. So should we talk about what's up next week?
Can I do I have time to tell a quick art anecdote, which is true story and kind of amazing? Maybe not, but you guys will be the judge. A woman named Marai, M-A-R-I. Marai was Janet. My wife and I were friends with her and her husband years and years and years ago before we moved to LA, and then we moved and we lost touch with them. And I had heard that her husband passed away, and then as recently as 10 years ago, I ran into Marai on the street, and I said, "Oh my God, how are you?" So forth and so on. And she said, "Oh, I live in the city now. I live on Park Avenue." And I said, "Oh, well, that's interesting." And so I said, "Let's have coffee." And so a couple days later, we had coffee. And I said, "What has happened?" And she said, "I want to tell you what has happened to me." And I said, "Okay, great. I love a good story." And she said it in a way that was like, I want to tell you what's happened to me. And she said that her husband had died like 17 years ago, and she said, and it was really horrible, and he died quickly, and so forth and so on. And they had 2 daughters, and she was raising them. And she said she got a phone call one day from a journalist in Amsterdam. And he said, are you, I don't want to use her last name, but he said, are you so-and-so? And she said, yes. And he said, would you be the daughter-in-law of Otto somebody? And she said, I am. And she said, but I never met him. And the journalist on the phone from Amsterdam said, right, he died as he and his wife and their infant son were leaving Rotterdam for Canada when the Nazis invaded Holland. And Marai said, yes, that's true. And so the journalist said, and that little boy who was 1 year old, who was on the boat, would have been your husband. And she said, yes, that's true too. How do you know all of this? And so he said, he said, the story that I found is that they had left Rotterdam, left the homeland, and the husband went up on deck to look back, and typically they turned all the lights off on the ships so they wouldn't get air rays, so they wouldn't get hit, so they couldn't be seen. And he fell through an opening and fell through the deck and was killed, hit his head and died. So an hour or 2 after leaving Rotterdam, after leaving the homeland, husband died. And so the mother is there with a 1-year-old, and she flees to Canada, and she puts that life behind her. So Marai says, oh my God, yes, I know that, but that's all I know. And the journalist said, are you aware that your father-in-law, who died on the ship, was an art dealer? And she said, kind of. She said, but they didn't talk about that part of their life because it was so horrific. And he said, well, I've been doing a story, and I have found his register. I have found his catalog book of his art. And she said, I don't know what you're talking about. And she said, you are the heir, I believe, to about 1,400 paintings. And they are scattered all through Europe. And some of them are in major, major, major museums. And he said, lady, I got to tell you, you own Rembrandts. You own Rembrandt. You own big, big art. And she said, what should I do? And she said, the first thing you should do is get a lawyer. Second thing you should do is get on a plane and get to Amsterdam. So I said, Marai, what? She said, yes. And she said, and we've recovered. She said, my daughter and I have spent the last however many years, decade more, recovering art to our family. And she said, would you like to come to my apartment? And I said, sure. And Park Avenue, room after room after room after painting after balcony, and I said, so Marai, you're wealthy? And she said, yes. She said, we're kind of wealthy beyond belief. She said, and we have so much art that we now loan our art to galleries. She said, so, museums. She said, a museum will call us and say, could we do a showing and have 4 or 8 or whatever, and then we loan them out for a fee. And we sold some of the art, which is how I bought this apartment. And
that is wild.
She said, but it was literally a phone call, and this man said, are you Marai? And I'm a journalist in Amsterdam. And she said, she said, I almost hung up on him. I thought, what is this guy calling? And she said, my grandchildren's lives and their children's lives will be changed forever because of that phone call.
Life's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
And her husband had no idea.
Her husband had no idea, because the mother, who was very stoic, apparently, and she knew this, she said, the mother drew a line and said, we don't talk about the old country. We don't talk, because that is dead and over. And
you would think that she would know about this, right?
She said she knew that he was or she said he was an art dealer, but the fact that she said the Nazis took everything, and she said so then the Nazis came in, took his art, and then it was dispersed and sold and bought and traded, and she said, and that's why she said it was literally all over Europe.
Wow. And
she said we could go, and she said, by the way, we would go into museums and say, and have the documentation, and she said a lot of those museums say we won't honor that. She said, so a lot of the art we still haven't gotten back.
That's so messed up.
Is that a good story?
She should tweet about them and send the people at them.
She's been in the New York Times. Her story's been in the New York Times.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty damn good story, isn't it? And but I mean, she's looking to bankroll. But you guys are good. You guys, by the way, you guys are just a little too mercenary with that, but that's okay. It was like a little, I mean, you could have paused for a beat. Instead, they were like, get the fucking money. How about a check? Not that I didn't think of. Not that I didn't think of.
We're at time. So.
Oh, no.
Oh, we're out of time. Sorry. Did I run over? I'm sorry. I ran over.
We are doing Bicycle Thieves. John.
Oh, man.
John's doing Bicycle Thieves.
Oh, man. Bicycle Thieves. Yeah, you're going to love it. I've got, and Adam, you've seen it. Alexie, I'm guessing you have not seen it.
No, I did. I was eating a muffin. Remember?
Oh, you ate a muffin. Yeah. The muffin movie. Yeah, right. The muffin movie. Okay. Anyway, I'm looking forward to talking about Bicycle Thieves. I love the film. It does not resemble in any way Grand Budapest Hotel. I think that's fair to say.
Oh, man.
Although it takes place in Europe.
Tell people what to look out for.
I don't want to spoil anything. Look out for the ambiance, the tone, the beauty and richness. Also, the film when it takes place and who these people are. It's that's kind of all. I want you to see it and experience it. It's a masterpiece. And I'll talk about it next week.
Yeah.
All right.
So
well, on that
real quick, everyone. Well, real quick, if anyone wants to get scripts for coffee class, be sure to sign up at the link. We send them out ahead of time. And that's all we send out to people for coffee class. You won't get anything else from us. So you'll just get some scripts every week. And if you like this conversation and want to continue it, you can also join our Discord, where we're there every day talking about movies and films and screenwriting and all that. That's also a link in the description. And if you haven't got a chance, you should consider subscribing. So, yeah.
We also have some exciting stuff that might be announced next week.
Yeah, some exciting Thanksgiving week news, right?
Yep. Yes. Good stuff coming.
Keep your ears open.
Cool.
That was fun. Thank you for Grand Budapest Hotel. I loved it.
Yeah, great pick, Adam.
Adios.